This is Life Admin Life Hacks, a podcast that gives you techniques, tips and tools to tackle your life admin more efficiently, to save your time, your money and improve your household harmony.
I'm Dinah Roberts, an operations manager who's kind of addicted to reselling clothes on Facebook Marketplace that's intrigued about the idea of renting as an alternative option.
I'm Mia Northrop, a researcher and writer who recently rented a dress for the first time and, as a classic fashion underbuyer, was instantly hooked.
In this episode, we interview Kathrin Baumann, who explains what is a circular economy and how they're beneficial, why circular fashion is important, and how you can rent clothes for yourself or your kids.
Hello and welcome to Life Admin Life Hacks. One aspect of life admin that people don't often recognise as life admin is maintaining a wardrobe of clothes to wear. Clothes don't magically turn up in your closet. Someone has to decide what to wear, where to buy them, maintain them, and then dispose of them thoughtfully if and when they no longer appeal to you, or they're outgrown, or they're beyond mending. So we touched on this work in episode 61, Shopping for, Storing and Decluttering Clothes, but it was great to interview an expert in the growing area of circular fashion. Kathrin, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Mia, for having me.
So in a previous podcast episode, we talked about shopping for, storing and decluttering clothes. And for parents especially, managing your kids' wardrobe is actually a life admin task that can take up a lot of time and headspace. You know, they grow out of things quickly. Some have strong tastes that can also change quickly. And making sure they have enough to wear without breaking the budget is an ongoing task. So what drew you into the world of circular fashion?
Well, exactly the problem you're just describing. My kids were growing out of the clothes very quickly, and I have a boy and a girl, so I couldn't even pass them down. And then just the act of going through the closet and every season, sometimes multiple times, decluttering, then I'm storing them in the garage, filling them up with boxes. Then when you're ready to sell, you're taking sometimes pictures of individual items, listing them on marketplaces, responding to people's messages, sending them off. It's an endless task, something else on my list. So then I cluttered them into one big box or passed them on to friends and family members. That list is actually, so I experienced that problem myself with my kids. And then also just hearing and reading about the impact of fashion on our environment kind of was daunting. And I was like, oh, okay. And kids are even contributing to it more because they need new clothing sometimes when they're little, every 3 months. So yeah, that kind of triggered some of my thinking and going into this business.
So how does the fashion industry contribute to environmental waste?
So let's talk especially about kids. They grow out of them very quickly. So sometimes we tend to buy fast fashion brands, cheaper products. They are made out of, a lot of them have polyester and plastic in it. So it's bad materials. They use a lot of water. Most of them are manufactured in some third or second world countries. So that's when they're manufactured. But then when we consume them, we might only use them for a couple of times and then we throw them out. If you throw them to those recycle bins and then they get shipped off to some of those countries where you might have seen some pictures of deserts full of waste, clothing waste, and they're not recycled, they're not reused, and it just lands there. So
yeah. Recently I was with my family and we went to, it was like a Pioneer World, like one of those old-timey Sovereign Hill kind of Pioneer Worlds where you go into old-fashioned houses and they had all these bedrooms and each bedroom had this tiny little wardrobe. It was like, you know, a wooden standalone wardrobe and maybe a chest of drawers, and that was two people's full wardrobes. And my daughter was like, whose clothes went in there? And I'm like, well, that would have been the parents. All their clothes would have gone in that. And she's like, how? And I said, well, you know, in the olden days, people had much smaller wardrobes. They had a couple of dresses. They had one coat, one jacket, a couple of pairs of shoes, and that's it. You know, we have vast wardrobes now, whether it's kids or adults. And there's just been such a shift in the variety of clothes we wear and then the frequency in which we're shopping. And
new trends as well.
Yeah,
right?
the fast fashion cycle.
And I think fashion is, depending on what stats you're reading, between 8 and 10% of the world's carbon footprint is from the fashion industry. So it contributes quite a large amount to our carbon emissions as a whole.
Yeah. So, Catherine, break down the circular economy idea. For us people who aren't familiar, what is the circular economy and how does it work when it comes to clothes?
I think what people hear a lot are the kind of the three R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. So, first of all, I think a lot of when you look at fashion, there's a whole new movement to reduce your consumption in the first place. So, not buy as many clothes and only buy really the pieces that you're going to wear. So, I think that's where a lot of advocates try to actually reduce consumption in the first place. Then we're trying to reuse as much. So whether that is passing down, a resale, a rental, or some people are mending and making new things out of clothing. And then the end of life is then the recycle. So can we recycle textile into other products? Yeah, so that's kind of, and it's about like a circular, it's closing the loop. So reusing as much as possible in my business sense, yeah.
Yeah, and some of the big retailers now, you can take back in clothes or textiles, can't you?
Yeah, you can take back, they might reuse them for new products, they might resell them, or there's a lot of textile recyclers that come up that like really end of life garments that are then recycled into construction material, stuffings for cushions or furniture, things that can be reused instead of landing in landfill.
Okay, so I'm familiar with, I think H&M does it and Uniqlo does it. Are there other retailers that you're aware do it?
There's a few that Kathmandu, I think, does. Patagonia is one of the pioneers as well. And a lot of the children's brands are also offering either a take back or they might have a completely different website where they offer resale, or they call it reworn, reborn, all of those kind of things. So they take back, you can get a credit for new stuff, but you know that your pre-loved clothing is actually resold to other people.
Yeah, the credit's a nice incentive. So, Catherine, how have people's views on getting secondhand clothes changed? What have you observed in your time in the industry?
So for occasional wear, I think it's very common. Like if you think about you going to the races or to a wedding and you as an adult, you're wearing this dress only once. So they're more inclined to rent. For children's wear, especially in Australia, I think hand-me-downs is a very common movement. So you pass on your pre-loved clothing that you know your kids loved to someone in your family or your friends. And also I think if parents buy quality durable clothing, I've seen you can get 5, 6 families wear out of them. So they pass them on. So I think that is something that's quite common in Australia. And then I do think there's a big culture, and it's been really getting more and more like the op shopping. There's some really high-end op shops who only sell luxury brands. So I think the movement is definitely there in Australia. And I think when you think about other industry, like you're renting a car, you're renting out, I don't know, any equipment, tents, bikes. Why not your clothes that you only use for a short period of time?
Yeah, I was always really grateful when my kids were little. The families that did come to, they'd come over and, I brought a few pieces for you. It was wonderful. It's like Christmas getting a bag full of hand-me-downs. And there were some families where there was one family in particular, they had 3 daughters. So when my daughter was born, it was beautiful. It was beautiful what came my way. And it was nice to be able to return the favour and pass on my old clothes or their old clothes.
I love seeing pictures, or like when I see my friends with their little daughter and she's wearing the dress that my daughter wore, and I'm like, oh, I love that someone is loving it as much as my daughter did. So, it's something that is still being used.
Yeah. It's funny because when I was giving my daughter's clothes away, there were lots of neighbours in the street who had kids who were just a little younger. So I gave them the clothes to them. And then they've obviously given them to other people in the neighbourhood. And sometimes I just see some random child that I don't know. I'm wearing one of my daughter's old cool pieces of clothing. And I'm like, that's some value right there. That's some quality manufacturing and some value. Yeah. And I too have... Yeah, I dipped my toe in the water last year with this because Dinah and I went to the NGV Gala, which is a big ball at the National Gallery here in Melbourne. It was our end of year sort of celebration for each other. And you have to frock up. You have to wear something fancy. It's like people are there in full-on gowns. It's really fun. And I do not have a wardrobe of formal wear. And I've talked a lot on the show about how I'm kind of an underbuyer. I don't buy a lot of clothes. I'm not passionate about fashion. But I really wanted to wear something fancy. And so I ended up at a site called The Vault, VOLTE, The Vault. And it's a site where people who have gone and bought wonderful dresses make them available to rent. So you can rent these amazing gowns for a fraction of the cost of what they are to buy. And literally, you pop on the site, find something that's your size, they mail it to you, you wear it. They include a post bag. You put it back in the post bag and send it back. You don't even have to launder it. They'll take care of all of that. So it was so convenient. It was so fun to wear this fabulous piece for one evening and then send it off. It ticked a lot of boxes in my book in terms of fashion.
And it saves a lot of money.
Yeah, it does, because I would not have wanted to fork out, whatever, $500 for that dress and worn it once, or been stressed about when am I going to get the value, when am I going to rewear this particular gown. It was kind of nice to just have a gown that I wouldn't normally wear and have that kind of shock value of it and never wear it again. Yeah.
Another thing I've tried is swapping with friends as well. I went to a function as well last year and I didn't have the right shoes. And I was like sending a message to my friend. I was like, do you have some shoes I can wear with this dress? So sometimes just swapping wardrobes with your friends is also good, budget-friendly and circular fashion as well. So
yeah. So tell us how Little Renters works. What's the model? How do you do it? How do you get involved?
So Little Renters is a children's clothing rental service. At the moment, we are looking at newborns to year 5. So what basically, instead of buying the clothing and it's high quality clothing, you sign up on a subscription and you get a bundle of clothing that you choose in terms of your style preferences, and you get them for the month. You keep them as long as you want. You can have them for 2 months, 3 months. If your child suddenly has a growth spurt or it's now a different season, you can request a swap, and we basically swap out any amount of clothing and you basically have a new wardrobe. And it is saving you the time of buying and reselling and decluttering and storing. It's saving you money as well, because it's definitely just a fraction of what you would pay if you buy these clothing items outright. And at the end of the day, it's good for the planet as well.
So what kinds of, you said you get to choose different styles. What kinds of styles are you talking about?
So we call it a style questionnaire. So once you subscribe, we send you styles questionnaire and you can choose your favorite colors, your favorite prints, brands you love, the season. If you have anything particular, if you're going to an occasion and you need a special dress, you can put those preferences as well. And then we curate a specific bundle based on that. So if you like pop colors and bright colors or floral or animals, we make sure that you get exactly what your kid and you love.
Oh, that's good, because I just remember some judgmental mummy moments when you see, I just didn't like dressing my children in black. I mean, there's always kids in black and like animal print, and I just was like, yeah, not for me. So it's great that you get to choose the styles that work for
and
you.
every child has their own favorite colors, or like they're suddenly into dinosaurs, or so we try and make sure that there's these pieces that exactly like you're looking for.
And so how do people prepare their clothes to be rented out? Like what kind of brands are we interested in, and what kind of quality do they have to be?
So there's the model of you can sell your pre-loved clothing to us, and I inspect and I clean, and sometimes I repair, take out stains, but really a lot of the clothing sometimes we get either has still a tag on it, or you can tell they've been barely worn, but they're still in like excellent or like new condition, and then we put them up for rent.
Okay. So you're selling your clothes on and then you rent it out. So it's just a one-off transaction. Got you.
So the parents that basically give us their pre-loved clothing, they earn every time this item is rented out. So I have a way of tracking that this item was given by Mia's family, and every time this item is rented out to another family, you accumulate a revenue share basically, and you get a payout once the item is sold. So over the life cycle of this garment, you can actually earn more than if you would sell this one item for $5 on a marketplace.
Oh, wow.
And I think also that this item has been gone to multiple families along the way.
Wow. So let me just check I've got that right. You can either sell it outright to you and then you'll make it available to rent, or you make it available to rent ongoing and you earn revenue each time it's rented out.
It's the second
It's
one.
the second one. Oh, I see.
Yes, yeah. And I have a lot of customers who actually do both. So they give me their outgrown clothing and then they rent the next size up. So it's kind of a cycle as well. You're contributing your pre-loved items to the little renters community, but then also you're renting your next size up.
Yeah, that's cool.
So that's quite a budget-friendly way of earning money, but also getting new clothing.
Yeah. And do you take the full range of brands, or are you only interested in sort of high-end premium brands? What's the
Yes,
deal?
so our target is high-end premium brands because the material is more durable and we can last it for longer. And some of the brands like Pure Baby, for example, if parents have bought them, you can wash them pretty well and they can go through multiple families. So our business model is built on items that have durability and then you can rent it out for longer. But having said that, some of the items, because they're still new, and I feel that like the fast fashion items, I still feel I can make them last longer and reuse them. So we have a couple of items in inventory that are from fast fashion brands, but it's not our preference because they only last maybe a couple of families. And then the materials are so thin, you get holes in and you can't wash them properly. And I can really tell the difference between 100% cotton item versus something that has polyester or like cheaper qualities in it.
Yeah. So that's reassuring for people who decide, when they are trying to make decisions for their clothes, if they're going to be handing it down to their own children or to others, that it's worthwhile going for that quality because you are going to get longer life out of it within your own family, and then possibly make it available to rent for others to use and potentially make more money on it than you did spending it.
And a lot of those brands, on average, you pay between $40 and $70, depending on what category. If you buy a knit or like joggers, they're high end. You pay a lot for one piece, so it also makes sense then to rent it.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Okay. And do you see any other sort of trends or habits amongst people who are trying to be eco-conscious around fashion? What else are people doing?
I think and I've gotten myself into it, like trying to repair as much as possible. You might have your favorite knit or one of your favorite items and it has a hole or something. You can still mend it and there's still ways to kind of fix it. There's beautiful repair workshops in some of communities where you can go and learn how to repair your items. So I've done this with clothing myself, but then also use some of the material and make something new out of it, whether that's, I don't know, finding new ways like bags and using the textile and recycling, upcycling it for other areas in your house. Yeah.
It feels like there's a whole range of lost skills to do with clothes making and mending clothes. My grandmother had a sewing room and it was always fun to go to her house and step gingerly into the sewing room with bare feet because there were often pins all over the floor. And she had like a mannequin. She would make us so many clothes as cousins with a lot of matchy outfits going on. But she could make anything and she made the majority of her clothes. And I have these beautiful fond memories of going to, big haberdashery stores with her where you get out the pattern book and she'd be flicking through the pattern book looking for styles and then going and finding all the fabrics. And my mum and auntie can also sew and they can knit and it's lost. I have zero skills.
It's a beautiful skill to have, I think.
I got given a sewing machine and I can run up a hem, I can do, straight stuff. I've attempted to make a pair of pajamas once that didn't go well. It was the whole measure twice, cut once thing.
But there's a lot of, if people are interested, I think a lot of communities have started these kind of repair workshops. A lot of them are for free as well, where you can bring one or two clothing items and they teach you how to mend. So I've done that a couple of times and we've got my kids to come along, get one of their clothing as well, and they taught us how to mend it. Even the little, like some things you can do at home. You don't need the perfect sewing skills as well.
Yeah.
So.
Are there any you would suggest? We can put links to in the show notes if people want to tap into this.
I find in my suburb they're very local, so keeping up to date with your local community groups, they might pop up, especially now in Melbourne, and I think they are in Sydney as well, those fashion festival or Melbourne Fashion Week. There are workshops as well where you can bring your clothing and either repair it or sometimes swap it. Yeah. So I think they're not particular bigger ones, but they're very local, hyper local in your community.
Okay, so tap into your little local community newspaper and your council newsletters and magazines about those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, Kathrin, where do you think this whole circular economy is going? What do you see as things that we keep in mind for the future?
I think what I can see, and especially if you look overseas in some of especially Europe, where governments and manufacturers and retailers are being held accountable for their fashion waste and what they're producing and how they're producing it. In Australia as well, it's coming slowly as well. And there's a lot of pioneering brands here as well who take it on themselves already to make sure they're producing eco-friendly, sustainable, but they're also having a take-back program. And there's a lot happening, I think. And in the next couple of years, when you look at, you said for women's wear, it's very mainstream now to maybe rent an occasion wear, and especially the younger generation, they are used to finding little gems in op shops. There's a thing to go to op shops and find the handbag or the dress that usually costs $500. I think there is more and more coming. And with children's wear, when I talk to parents, they're like, oh my God, you're so right. They're growing out of it so quickly. It makes totally sense rather than spending $50 or $60 to rent it when I only know I need it for 2 or 3 months. So I think I can see a slow trend. And with the rental model, I think it's something that people need to just hear about more and try it out, and then they find, oh, this is actually quite convenient and it's saving me time and I don't have to worry about going to the shops or ordering online. And
yeah, okay, that's cool. It's great to hear that it's sort of coming from the top down, but also coming from the grassroots up.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think if you look at outside of fashion industry in other products, there's more and more people are very conscious about what's in the product, who manufactures, where is it coming from, what's the footprint, and how can I reduce my waste at home. Big movement.
Lovely. Kathrin, is there anything else you want to share with our listeners when it comes to circular fashion?
I think my journey as well, I think it's trying out different things, and whether that's handing down, going to a swap event. I've started to actually go into different op shops and see if I can find something there, just going or mending my own clothing, just going on a journey and see what works for you. Some people like to buy new things, but maybe being more conscious about, do you really need it? Is this a durable brand? Is this something that I know I will wear for longer and not just this summer?
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and ideas with us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mia, for having me.
So where can our listeners find you if they want to hear more?
So they can find us on Instagram and follow us on little_renters, or they can hop on our website, littlerenters.com, where they can either sign up to the newsletter or even if they're very keen to try out renting with Little Renters. And we will offer your listeners a promo code 10% off for the first 3 months. So if you want to try the rental, just sign up. We'll send the promo code in the newsletter.
That's wonderfully generous, Kathrin. Thank you so much. So listeners, if you'd like to get that 10% promo code, sign up for the Life Admin Life Hacks newsletter, and we'll include it in there. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Mia, for having me.
Thanks for listening. Show notes for this episode are available at lifeadminlifehacks.com. And if you're a fan, please subscribe and share the love and tell a friend, or review us in your podcasting app. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.